So those of you that were with us on Saturday, we talked about forgiveness, and I wanted to follow up, sort of tangentially follow up with that today, and talk about humility, which I think is a close cousin, or they sometimes kind of complement each other, humility and forgiveness. And humility has been lauded as a virtue in most of the world's faith traditions over the centuries, and that's no less true in Buddhism. And it's really an antidote, as we'll get into in a minute, to the demands of the ego, the constant demands of the ego. I mean, the demands of the ego and the practice of humility are really opposite ends of the pole. And the benefits of humility are many, including persistence in the face of challenges and failure. And when we practice humility, we tend to hold less rigid beliefs, less rigid attitudes. We're more often perceived as friendly and warm. We often would be characterized as humble, lacking arrogance. All of these are sort of the antithesis of humility. Is and when we cultivate it, is really these attributes are the antithesis of arrogance and ego. And humility keeps us open to the world, to learning new things, to seeing the world with fresh eyes. We don't go around acting like we already know everything. We don't go around, we talked about know-it-alls on Saturday, and that humility is really an antidote to that. And it really comes with the cultivation of wisdom, because we begin to see the world with humility. We see it as it is, with all its mystery, all its complexity, all the things we don't know. We don't think, we don't try to see the world as we want it to be. So it's really an antidote for that kind of delusion that we talk about when we talk about the three poisons of greed, hatred, and delusion. Because no matter how knowledgeable I might be or how skillful I might think I am, there's always more to learn. There's always more out there that we don't know. There are always people with different perspectives. There's always life experiences we haven't had. There's always knowledge and skills we haven't learned. And always different people to cherish, to learn from, to be with, to cultivate connection with. So humility helps us cultivate empathy and relatedness. It's just such a wonderful virtue. I just love it as I was going through this and seeing all the qualities of it. But there are different kinds of humility, and I wanted to sort of break some of them down. And I ran across this when I was. This is not from me. This is from another source. But let me preface as we go through some of the different types of humility by saying that we can be humble and still hold strong opinions. It doesn't, again, mean that we're just going with the wind or, doormats or anything. But we don't hold our strong opinions out as the only way or the last word. We see that there may be, other options, even if we hold strong opinions. So we're open to that. We're open to hearing alternative viewpoints. So let's review some of let's break them down. The first of these is what's called cultural humility. Okay. And this is, we recognize that we have biases based on our cultural experience, based on our cultural identity, based upon our tribal identity. But we see that only is a partial understanding of people in general. Okay. We don't carry around stereotyped assumptions about other cultures, especially negative stereotyped assumptions that cause harm, create separation. So we see that our culture is not the be all and the end all. That's what's called cultural humility. The next is family humility. We respect the experience of others within our family, both young and old. Again, we're not, necessarily the final word on anything within our families, our extended families. Then we have intellectual humility, okay, whether internal or external. Okay, so internal intellectual humility, we question ourselves, we question our assumptions, we don't again assume that we have the final answer. And as we relate to others, we don't project this notion of this sort of arrogant notion that I know everything. You can't tell me anything. You can't teach me anything because I'm already there. We relate to others in good faith. We cultivate a sense of common humility and humanity. Okay. And this is what we talked about on Saturday. It sort of boils down to you can be right or you can be happy. When we talked about forgiveness, you can choose. But, I would say, instead of always opting to be right, maybe opt to be happy. The next one is humility of knowledge, accept that as much as any of us know or have learned, there is always more to know and learn. Right up to the end of our lives, we never stop learning, never stop being open to new perspectives, new viewpoints. Next is humility of skill. No matter how skillful I might be at something, it's good to stay humble in the face of new situations, look within for potential errors in our skill set, accept the inevitability of change in the world and in our lives. Because in this way, humility keeps us grounded. It keeps us mindful for situations in which our skills are required. Okay, so we're always open to recognizing that our skill set is not the be all and the end all. Then we have humility of wisdom. Just because we think that we cultivate superior wisdom, we need to remember that this can predispose us to arrogance, a lack of empathy, and it creates distance. It breaks down relatedness. Okay, because if we think we're the wise sage and everyone else isn't, that's really not an invitation for connection. It's really not an invitation for empathy or relatedness. This next one I love, the humility of awe. Seeing how small we are in the universe. We can see how important we are, yes, but also, awe helps us see that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and we're only one small cog in that larger machine. So we feel humble, we feel humility in the face of creation and all the beauty of the world around us. And then finally, and perhaps for our path more importantly, is the humility in the face of suffering. We understand that we could become overwhelmed and shut down when faced with large-scale suffering. But humility in those situations helps us keep our heart open. We accept that we can't fix it all. And I wish Ann Garrity was here. We accept that we can't fix those we care about necessarily. We don't have that level of control. We let go of this grandiose notion that we can save the world. But instead we cultivate presence, humility, and humor in the face of suffering. Okay, we see our limitations there. The humility comes in saying, yes, I can recognize your suffering, but I can't necessarily fix it. As much as it pains me to see you suffer, I accept with humility the limitations of my own impact here. So humility and humbleness are an important part of our path because, as I said earlier, it's an antidote for arrogance, it's an antidote for self-importance, and it's an antidote for any other ego-driven quality which always separate us from others. This notion of rugged individualism is not a path in a direction of community and acceptance of others and the greater good. So that's the beauty of humility as a practice. And it's very much woven throughout the Buddha's teaching. I mean, he talks about it explicitly, but it's implicit in so much of his teaching. When we talk about accepting, about letting go, about not being slave to the ego's demands, that's humility. So let's get your thoughts on that. Stop this.